Welcome, everyone. It is indeed my honor and pleasure to briefly introduce this session that we have called Compassion as the Engine of Service, Leadership, and Global Change, which is a pretty lofty title, but I think our eminent speakers are up to that challenge. So let me just briefly introduce them. For those of you who were here this morning, you did hear from Mr. Ajay Piramal, who is the chair of the Piramal Group, a very renowned philanthropist and entrepreneur. And as he remarked this morning, he believes in doing good and doing well, both at the same time. His pioneering entrepreneurship has led to some wonderful philanthropy work in India and elsewhere, where he has worked tirelessly to advance healthcare, education, and social transformation. We are also happy to welcome Mr. Richard Gere, who's joining us from Barcelona. And he is, of course, a world-renowned actor, but in this setting, we want to call attention to his tireless work as a humanitarian and an advocate for human rights and dignity around the world. And last of our three interlocutors for this session is Dr. Sonja Lyubomirsky. She is one of the most influential psychologists of our time and has really helped to inform our understanding of happiness and well-being and how compassion and generosity fuel true human flourishing. And guiding the conversation is someone I've had the pleasure of knowing for some years now, Mr. Kalden Lodoe, who is the managing editor of Radio Free Asia. He's a very seasoned journalist. He's also a wonderful storyteller, and we will be depending on him to bring his signature clarity and depth to this dialogue. I know that together with our very distinguished speakers, that we're going to have a session that is both meaningful and transformative. So we are very, very honored to have all of these speakers with us, and we're very honored to have all of you with us today. So please enjoy.
Good afternoon. I hope everyone had good lunch, good rest. Those who are jet lagged, please don't fall asleep. Wonderful to be here. Richard, I just wanted to make sure that you are participating from Madrid. Am I right?
Yeah. Yes, I'm from Madrid. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can. Yeah.
Okay, great.
All right.
Hello, everybody.
So the topic is big, but it's very important nevertheless. And as historians always reminds us that compassion is not a luxury, but essential for human survival and flourishing. Having a businessman, having an actor, humanitarian, having a scientist, I think it fits into the necessity of compassion in this world and within us every day. So what I will do is I'll try to weave into this conversation through their own experiences of practicing compassion, active compassion. So Mr. Piramal, Sonja, and Richard, thank you for being part of this very important conversation, and welcome to Atlanta. And those who are watching us online, welcome and please to enjoy. Ajay, this morning when you mentioned about your own philanthropic work, seva, the service, you said it's important to have this spirit of selflessness as a guiding principle. You talked about your inspiration, but can you please tell us, how do you draw your inspiration for such a wide-ranging services, not just, your philanthropy as an education, health. So what is your source of inspiration?
Well, the source of inspiration, as I said, maybe I'll repeat a little bit, perhaps, in the morning as well, is that I've been fortunate to be born in a family that has always had philanthropy and compassion as its center. And also, if I can say that, also the tradition of bhakti, or, that's the Indian word for devotion. So I was born in that environment. It further got enhanced by seeing the work which some of my family had done before me. And I had also had, because of family circumstances, I came into leadership in my business at a very young age. And at that time, we were mainly in the textile industry in Mumbai. The textile industry in Mumbai in the 80s was the largest employer in the city, but there was a huge strike with the entire industry where the labor went on strike for 18 months, which crippled the industry. And a lot of the workers, like we had more than 5,000 people working with us, but I could see that they were suffering because for 18 months they didn't get any wages. And most of them were not even, wouldn't get a job later on. So just seeing their suffering also did have a deep impact on me. And that's why, and third thing is important is that from the pretty young age, I started also understanding the scriptures, the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, for instance. I think all of it just showed that all of us humans are really interconnected and there is no difference. We are just privileged to be where we are today. Like I was privileged to be born in the family I was privileged to have my education, to be in the position I was then. But there are millions or billions of people who are not. And it sounded just unfair that you were born in something. I could have as well been born on the street. And hence, that's how the personal journey began of really doing something more. How can you make a positive difference to the world around you?
So basically, there's a strong influence through your traditional spirituality, a religion for that matter. And also this morning you talked about the trusteeship, right? So, Richard, if I may go to you, what Ajay speaks of trusteeship and higher purpose, you have been deeply influenced by the teachings of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the connection that you had with His Holiness. What parallels do you see in his teachings on compassion and action?
I'm struck by the story that our friend just told about where he came from and how influenced we are by our parents, for sure, as our first teachers, what we're imprinted on from our very first teachers. But later on, as we're adults and we seek out our own teachers from our own volition, I think we start to engage who we are in the center of us. As adults, as free thinkers, as people who start to feel that we can have an influence on this world around us in ways that maybe as a child we never did. And part of that is the two aspects of wisdom, of course, that and transcendence that His Holiness talks about it. One is understanding what reality is and the nature of the self, the I, the ego. Where is this? Can it be identified? Does it in fact even exist? So the pinnacle of wisdom from a Buddhist point of view is to embrace from a deep place inside of ourselves that everything is empty of inherent existence. And another way of saying that is that we're all deeply interconnected. We all influence everything else. So everything we do is important. And that leads to a great sense of responsibility. Now, what do you do with that responsibility? And then you get to the other pillar of Buddhist thought, and especially His Holiness, is bodhicitta, or compassion. So the highest emotion, the highest of feeling that a human being can have is compassion. And the ultimate aspect of compassion is altruism. Do I sacrifice myself for the good of many? Are we capable of doing that? Now, if you come from the point of view that we're all deeply interconnected, then, of course, what the other feels, I feel also. When the other's hungry, I feed him or her.
Right.
When they're suffering, I do whatever I can to be there for them. But if you haven't attacked this idea of the ego, if you haven't really damaged it in a fundamental way, this idea that we are living in our own separate modules, then you can never really have an authentic sense of compassion.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. So the drawing from the teachings of method and wisdom, the compassion and the ultimate, the philosophy of ultimate reality, it certainly teaches us the interconnectedness, and therefore the compassion being the pillar of bringing good in the society. Going there, it seems like you, both Ajay and Richard, you are referring to compassion as the motivator, the motivating factor in bringing something good in the society or returning something to the society. So, Sonja, from your research, is compassion something innate, or can it truly be cultivated?
Great. Well, let's talk about the science of compassion, the science of kindness, which is something I've been doing for like 20 years or 30 years. So yes, compassion is partly innate. I mean, every human trait is partly heritable, almost everything from depression to happiness to blood pressure to love of jazz music, it turns out, is also genetically influenced. So yes, compassion is partly innate, but it can absolutely be learned. Now, what I do in my experiments is we call it kindness. It's hard to induce compassion. It's a little bit of a deeper state and feeling. So we study behavior. So in my lab, we do basically clinical trials, but instead of testing a vaccine or a medication, we test like acts of kindness. Like if you randomly assign some people to be more kind, generous, compassionate to others, and then we randomly assign other people to a control group, and then we measure how connected they feel, how happy they feel. We'll even get their blood and see what happens with their biological markers. And so what we have found is that people who are randomly assigned, instructed to be more kind and compassionate to others for 1 month, they become happier, they feel more connected. And when we take their blood, they show changes in their RNA gene expression associated with a stronger immune profile. So they actually, and it's a biomarker, but it suggests that acting kindly and compassionately actually makes people healthier. So their bodies show less pro-inflammatory gene expressions, right? Think more inflammation is bad, so you want less inflammation. Greater antiviral gene expression. So, so we have lots of studies showing that if people are induced to be compassionate and kind, they become happier, more connected, and healthier.
So the inducing compassion in return, what is the percentage that you saw in your this subject of the testing? What percentage of people become much, much happier?
Yeah. I don't think I can answer that question because we don't usually look at percentages. We usually look at mean differences. But so I can't answer that question. Sorry.
Do they become less selfish?
Yeah, they become less selfish. Definitely people do. We usually ask people in our typical studies, and you can do this at home. You could do this week. Let's say for the next month. So let's say October, tomorrow, right? Is October. In the month of October, every Monday, do 3 acts of kindness or compassion that you don't normally do. And we usually have it on one day, because it's more powerful when you do it all in one day. You can do it differently, but that's how we do it. Every Monday, do 3 acts of compassion you don't normally do because we, of course, are kind every day. So it has to be something over and above what we do, and then see how you feel. And it turns out in other studies, we show that not only does the person you help and are compassionate towards or people get happier, but you get even more happier. So, that common saying, "'Tis better to give than to receive." We actually have studies that show that it's better to give than to receive. We have one study that showed when people are more compassionate and kind to others, the receivers get happier, but the givers get happier and stay happier for 4 months. 4 months.
Oh, wow.
So it's a bigger effect on the giver than on the receiver.
So did all three of you are very successful on your respective fields, but then going out in the society, no matter whatever you do, there are always challenges, and courage is needed, ethics is needed. So coming back to you, Mr. Piramal, you've tried embedding your act of compassion into the prayers of the society in India. So can you give us some examples of the toughest challenges that you have faced, and how have you managed to overcome those?
So we in our foundation, which is a philanthropic foundation, we have 5,000 full-time people working all across India. And one of the things that we've realized is that we will work in those areas which are the most difficult and which are the most unserved areas. So for instance, we work in what was identified by our Prime Minister, that out of the 750 districts that India has, 112 were those ones which were the most neglected. They could be in really remote areas, they could be in flood-prone areas, or they could have people who are tribal people who have not come out of the forests, etc., etc. So these were 112. And we started working in them as the largest foundation working on education, on terms of health, education. And there are challenges in these because each area, India is actually its own continent. And therefore, there are very, very different sort of languages, different customs, different practices which they've lived for generations and they've not fully integrated with the country. So how do you get people who have never been there to get accustomed to that? That was a big challenge for us. But I think these are all challenges which at the end of the day you feel more satisfied. So now, for instance, we are taking up an effort to see that certain parts of India is today the 4th largest economy in the world, but there are some parts of India and some people who are the most, their income levels are really behind. And as the world, more and more technology comes, AI comes, the per capita income of those people who are educated goes up much more. The gap between the haves and the have-nots is only increasing in India, as I think is increasing in the rest of the world. And if we don't tackle this, then there will be revolution ultimately, or people will not be happy. So that's where we work to how to convince them. And I think they are the ones who are really working on the ground to see that these areas work. So I think I would give credit to them.
Yeah, I remember the story of the Indian girl this morning, Seema, family of 6, and their monthly income is $100 something. So that's the poverty is really extreme in some parts of India.
And if I can just add to that, it's not only because of this, it's a multi-generational poverty. Because that child, Seema, in that example, she will not have education. She will not have good health care. There's not enough nutrition. But she will be probably married early because there's early marriage in those areas. So her kid will not have a healthy mother, a mother who's not maybe 16 and has a child. So it just goes on and on every generation.
But then your own story, your grandfather's story, with the $20 on hand can actually flip the log, so that's also how. So Richard, and you have faced resistance, whether in your acts of human rights, humanitarian work in other parts of the world. How has the compassion or the teaching has sustained you during those tough moments?
I remember many teachings with His Holiness. And Kalden, I've known you a long time now. We've known each other decades. And we've many teachings together. So you're like an old friend of mine. When you do this kind of work on your emotions, on how your mind actually functions, and brain functions, is when you start to access and want to access deeper places inside of yourself. And I think we all respond to kindness, all of us. I completely agree with that. We all know that. We walk into a room and there are people smiling. You immediately feel that you're welcome and secure. You walk into a room where people are angry and have problems and they look at you from sideways and whatever, and you have a reaction to that and you don't feel good. Kindness is something that animals respond to and humans respond to. Insects, plants respond to. But how do we get there? And I know from His Holiness's point of view, he said, look, some of these prayers in Buddhism are quite difficult and they're quite expansive. And there's no expectation you're going to be able to be enlightened. It's okay to fake it. Say the prayer. Say that you are enlightened. Say that you are compassionate to yourself over and over again. And it starts to habituate yourself to another way of thinking and feeling. Eventually, it's deeper. And another way of looking at it from a scientific point of view, you say, well, the blood changes, the pressure changes, the hormonal makeup changes. Maybe from a Buddhist point of view, it says the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas are there for you. When you behave with kindness and compassion and the gentle attitude and a basic sense of wishing everyone well, simply that, of looking at the universe, this external universe, and saying, I wish you well. I wish you wellness. How that ultimately changes yourself. But it does have an effect in the external world as well.
Yeah. So as you said, Buddhism teaches compassion. For example, you just mentioned about the four immeasurable minds, and also faking. In a sense, tantric Buddhism is kind of mimicking what you want to achieve, right? So the aspiration is there to become Buddha. Sonja, on many occasions, compassion is probably people understood as or equate with vulnerability, but in terms of scientific data, is there a measure to show resilience and strength of, when people become happier or act in an act of compassion?
Mm-hmm. I mean, there are measures of resilience. So you're saying, do people become more resilient after they are kinder? Actually, I don't know any research on that. It does make sense that they would. What we find is when people act with kindness and compassion, they feel like more of a sense of meaning in their life, and they feel a greater sense of competence and agency, like control. And I feel like when I'm helping others and I see that it has a positive effect on others, I feel more competent, right? I feel good about myself. And I feel more self-confident. And all of those qualities can add up to to resilience and strength. So I don't know any research on resilience per se, but it makes sense, right? So again, acting, and these are all in experiments, right? So and it's important to do experiments, because if you just measure compassion, resilience, gratitude, confidence in people in a correlate, just to give people questionnaires, you don't know what's causing what, right? But if you do an experiment and you randomly assign some people to be compassionate or kind, some people to a control group, then you can conclude that it's the compassion, kindness that leads to that quality you're measuring. So again, we do know that acting compassionately like leads people to become more self-confident, to have a greater sense of meaning and a greater sense of competence.
Right. Yeah. His Holiness has always reminded us that the innate quality of human beings is compassion. Not only that, in Buddhism, every sentient being possess the Buddha nature.
There are these great studies with toddlers or like kids who are 1 or 2 years old, and the experimenter will like drop something and they immediately go and they pick it up, where the experimenter pretends they can't like do something, and the 1 or 2 year old kid will help, right? So it's sort of showing that it really is innate that we want to help others.
So yeah, in that case, the Holiness always Holiness had in the past and always do, is that instilling that the sense of compassion from a very young age, because they have this quality. So therefore, His Holiness has encouraged Emory University and Geshe Losang Tenzala. You have taken the core role in propagating the education and compassion, whether it's C learning on CBCT, and Ajay, you have experimented, or you are still experimenting with this in over 100,000 schools in India. So not very long ago, but I'm sure you must have seen some sort of impact. And that. So what impact do you see by employing C learning education as well as CBCTs in India?
Yeah, I will come to that because we're seeing a lot of impact. But I just want to continue what Richard and Dr. Sonia said. Actually, if you look at it, if a human being, the way dharma is defined in our tradition is, that is the essence of anything. So, for example, the essence of water is liquidity. If it is not liquid, it is not water. Similarly, it is said that the essence of any living being is, the dharma of any living being is compassion and love. So we are all really connected. And you spoke about the interconnectedness. And Richard, he lives in the US, but works on...
Richard now lives in Spain.
He is from the US, but connected to Tibetan philosophy. So that's one thing which is really important. And that's why even for a young child, it is for us to awaken. We sometimes forget what is our true nature. So the true nature of any individual is really love and compassion. And this is what we find when we go to SEAL. As you said, in 100,000 schools, we've done it. I was recently going to some of the schools and meeting these children. Some of them, these girls were in their second standard. So they must be, 7, 8 years old. Even there, they were being taught SEAL and how to be compassionate. How do they feel their emotions coming out? And I met some of their parents and grandparents. The impact that a small child can have in the whole family to improve the whole environment in that family is amazing. Otherwise sometimes their parents are alcoholics, they may fight and all that. But once you do this compassion now, we found that it has a significant difference. And now we've also measured it through, we have independence or a group which does learning, measuring the impact of learning. Whether it's only compassion, whether it's SEAL, there's a combination of all this means that school learning levels are going up and people are happier and better. I think that's important. I'm sure Dr. Sonia will find more of her scientific thing, but at least from whoever I have seen, they are a much happier, better lot. And so all other people who are doing it with us, they are today working much harder than any normal professional business executive does. But they, I think, live happier lives.
So, Sonia, as Ajay was just saying, that actually impacts not just one person, the society level, in terms of, does it come from regulating emotions of individual, then reflecting them on the society? Or can you call it science in action? So how do you describe it? What do you
Yeah,
see?
so compassion and life. I want to talk about love more too. I think love is really important. Well, the ripple effects, I guess I call them ripple effects of compassion and kindness, because they have, you show compassion to others and then they want to pay it forward. So you're elevated. There's an emotion called elevation where you feel moved, you feel a warmth in your chest, and you feel inspired. Like when you see someone else help someone, that you want to do the same. And so it creates these ripple effects of kindness. But I also want to talk about love, because I think love is so important. So I've spent the last 2 years immersed in like the science of love, writing a book called How to Feel Loved, because we all want to feel loved. And how do we do it? And one of the keys is compassion. And we call it an open heart. When you have an open heart towards other people in your life, not just your partner or your child, but your colleague, your neighbor, everyone, strangers even. You have an open heart. You have warmth and compassion and just kindness, like wishing them to be happy, wishing them to be well. And that also has ripple effects, right? And we all, especially right now, we don't want to talk about politics, right? But right now, we all need more love, right? We need to feel loved, and we all want to feel loved. And why, spreading love, having those ripple effects of love in the world, wouldn't that be wonderful? Like the more we can do that right now.
Richard, talking about this, you have been around His Holiness for so long, and the impact of His Holiness's compassion towards others, and almost everyone in this room, whoever had encountered with His Holiness, you feel His presence of love, whether you speak to Him or you don't. In just being in the presence, you feel this great sense of love. So, Richard, how do you see the practice of living each day as an embodiment of compassion shape individuals, relationships, and even the culture around them?
Well, I think the thing that you feel being around His Holiness is that He's only there for you. It's not about Him. And how powerful that is. And it's because of the work He's done on Himself. Of course, He is the definition of kindness and warm heart and love, the passion. What does that really mean in the world? I don't know that you can ever quantify that. It's a subjective feeling of security, or health, of happiness. These are all, they're kind of nebulous things that we feel in the presence of this external universe that His Holiness appears to be in, that is completely embracing us with all of our faults, with all of our negativities, with all of our bad karma, all the bad things we have done, but also embracing the good things we have done and our ultimate nature, which is wisdom and ultimate compassion. I forget what the question was. Oh.
Richard, you answered everything. But the thing is now.
No, but I was going back. It's interesting where Sonja's going on. In many ways, I'm an expert on emotions. It was the first meeting that I had with His Holiness. He had no idea who I was in Dharamsala. And this was in monsoon season 45 years ago. And his brother, Nari Rinpoche, was explaining to him who I was. So he told him I was an actor. It was all in Tibetan. So he looked at me and he started asking me about emotions. And he said, when you are angry, are you really angry? When you're doing this job, this acting? And when you're happy, are you really happy? And when you're jealous, and when all of these emotions. And I had to think about it. And I said, well, from an actor's point of view, the more real it is, the more effective I can be as an actor in telling stories. And his Holiness looked at me a long time and penetrated me, and he started laughing. And I realized what he was telling me is that these emotions, which I'm manufacturing, is exactly what we do in life. In normal reality, we're manufacturing these emotions. They're not innate to us. We're habituated to these emotions. And if we could see that for what they are, that at root, they're just energy. Anger, hatred, all the bad things ultimately are energy. And if you can see them for what they are, they dissolve back into energy and then can be repurposed as love and compassion and altruism.
Yeah, it's really amazing having three of you here from very different fields, professional fields, yet there's this very deep sense of partnership in act of compassion, etc. But these should be happening more in the society, but very little attention is given to this area. If you talk about this, what do you think, Ajay, can bring more partnership in the society so that a true act of compassion can not only become a limited aspect of society, but it becomes more broader, everyday part of life?
One of the important things, like a conference like this, or even the whole the department which Emory has set up, I think is a very, very important way of spreading the word, spreading the talk about compassion. And the scientific research that you do just adds so much more credibility to it. Because otherwise, very often people will say that, okay, this is some sort of religious fanaticism or somebody else is preaching. But when we get universities, reputed universities like Emory, who are studying not only the scriptures, but they're putting it in, seeing people put it into practice, I think that is really important. And we have to spread much more of the word that's going around. I also tell people who are philanthropists, many of them are my friends, they do give contributions. So they are large-hearted in philanthropy, but they don't actually go and see what's happening. When you see it, I think the joy you spoke about, the joy of giving, is as much, if not more, than the joy of receiving. So when you go and meet people, so I would just encourage people to go and see whatever they are doing, whether it's a small act of giving or if it's a larger thing, to go and experience the impact small amounts also can make. I think it will just spread. And we have to talk about it. You also spoke once about vulnerability. I think for me, a true leader is the one who is vulnerable and authentic. If you are not vulnerable, you are not authentic, then you are not a true leader. So I think all this needs to be talked about much more in a society where otherwise there is a center, you have to be that powerful person and, sitting on the top and nothing goes wrong. Actually, all of us suffer somewhere or the other. So it's better to share it openly.
Yeah, Emory certainly leads on this field of compassion, and having this center, I think, is really wonderful. As a practitioner, I wanted to thank Emory for this. Richard, if you may recall, 26 years ago, this partnership between Emory and Soreness began, and you have spoken on certain occasions when Soreness visited Emory. Looking back, what do you see as a unique vision on this partnership, Emory and the Soreness now having this important center, and the Emory is actually leading on the social, economic, and ethics learning. So, how do you see this vision? How do you describe?
Well, I think, look, the seed learning, I think, is one of the most important things we have on the planet these days. This deep education on kids. I was watching something His Holiness was doing a series of seminars with some American educators, some academics last week. And in the end, the leader was asking, so Your Holiness, what would you like us to do after these deep sessions that they had? They said, teach others. Teach others. And meaning that, really teach children. Teach your young. You know, sometimes us old people, us old dogs, it's very hard to change. But if we can start with our kids, very early age, and help them to understand how their minds and their hearts work. And it's the most important lessons they'll ever learn in their entire life. Way more important than money or position or power, but to learn how their minds and their hearts work. And sea learning and the beginning work, which I saw 20-something years ago at Emory. I mean, who would have thought that this actually turned into something so extraordinary? I think that's because of His Holiness's influence. I've seen over the years, he'll throw something out into the world, an idea. And we all think like, that's a very grandiose idea. I don't know if that can ever happen. There's so many obstacles. And His Holiness sometimes gets a little angry with us for not seeing the vision large enough. Well, His Holiness saw the vision of this large enough and inspired enough people to make this happen. And as it is, I don't know how many countries now sea learning is in, as it's springboarded from the
75 countries? Yeah, 75 countries. Yeah.
75 countries. Yeah. And touching hundreds of thousands, millions of children at this point. But this springboard of this why is the partnership with Emory? I don't know. But
because
that's where His Holiness decided to do this. And of course, Geshe Negi, you know, having someone like Geshe Negi, who also is a bulldog,
yes,
and makes things happen.
I take this, okay, Richard is frozen. Okay, Richard, are you back? Yeah. Okay, so I take this, I'm sure the last word before you got cut off is the bulldog. I'm sure it's coming out of a very compassionate motivation. So I'll take it.
As we know, look, there's Vajrapani.
Yes.
Right? Which strength, power, skill, and capacity.
Right.
Vajrapani is a bulldog.
Yeah. So, Sonja, how does science validate what these partnerships try to achieve? Turning compassion into really a cultural norm. Yeah.
I'm not really an expert on, kind of the organizational or cultural aspect of things, but certainly, yeah, like the more people practice compassion, the more it becomes a norm, right? We model that behavior to our children, to our colleagues, our neighbors. I'm more of an expert on the individual. And I do want to add something, which is that, first of all, there's a loneliness epidemic, in the U.S. and I think in other parts of the world as well. And there's very few effective interventions for loneliness. You can't just take lonely people and just throw friends at them. They are suspicious of that. But one of the few effective interventions for loneliness is to ask lonely people to be compassionate and kind. Because when they help others, they feel more connected to others, and they kind of lose some of that sense of hesitation and vigilance and suspicion of other people. That's one. Two, and I think clinical psychologists would agree that many, if not most, of our problems are caused by too much self-focus and self-absorption, right? We are so in our heads. Now, sometimes it's adaptive and important to focus. When you're sad, that means there's a problem you need to focus on. But it's toxic. We're too focused on ourselves. And again, acts of kindness and compassion towards others takes the focus off of ourselves and puts it onto another person or a group of people. And so that also relieves depression and it relieves anxiety. So those also can have ripple effects as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to add to that,
yeah.
Sure.
I'm thinking about this question of the self that we're obsessed with. The self doesn't even exist. So we're obsessed with something that doesn't even have a basis in reality.
Yeah.
So when you remove that obsession, immediately you're absorbed back into this lower mind, the kind essence, which does have the innate quality of love and compassion as well as wisdom.
Right. One of the most respected Tibetan master, Benjamin Losang Chogyam, did say that all suffering arises from the extreme self-centeredness, right? So, absolutely. So in other words, so here, when we talk about compassion, happiness, I always wonder how important is ethics, practice of ethics. According to Buddhism, the practice of ethics is a foundation to accomplish all the goods, right? So therefore, discipline, or whatever we call it. And in this aspect, how important it is to have some sort of the spiritual sense of spirituality, whether it's based on certain religious belief or not. How important it is, Sonia?
The importance of spirituality.
Yeah.
Well, I'm an experimental psychologist. You can't do experiments. Well, you can't really do experiments with religiosity and spirituality, but we do find, not surprisingly, that people who are spiritual, also people who are religious, are happier and feel more connected and have a greater sense of purpose. Not surprisingly, they also are better able to handle adversity and tragedy and trauma. And so, so spirituality, I think, is very, very important. I think that we need to do more research.
Right.
But yeah, we have some research on it.
Ajay?
Sometimes spirituality and religious behavior, sometimes people misinterpret it. I mean, our belief in the Gita, it is said that there are different paths which go, like the different rivers, they flow into the ocean. You can have different paths. You can actually be an atheist and you still go and reach that path. So it's really important to have, on the basis of what you talked about, ethics. I can give you my own example. I was thinking, I come from a Hindu family, which is quite spiritually religious also, and spiritually inclined, and following what the Gita says. So my father had a Sufi guru. My mother had a guru from the Hindu Bhakti tradition. When my brother was ill, I was doing meditation from a Christian priest who was doing meditation as is done in Vipassana and yoga. And my guru today is a Hindu. He's from ISKCON, who was a Jewish converted into a Hindu. Now you can imagine. And
you left Mother Teresa part.
And yes, and Mother Teresa come. So now that's all the traditions together. And I think I feel myself to be blessed that I got the advantage of all. And at the end of the day, they were all same.
Right.
There was nothing different. The ethics and the values remain the same. And I have another my fractured experiences. I'm a businessman. And I found that if you do ethical practices in business, actually it creates the most economic value in the long term. In the short term, sometimes you may feel if you're, living a life of integrity in your business, maybe you're sacrificing things. But in the long term, at least in my business experience of 45 years, it has created more value than not,
so
compared to anything else.
If it's coming from you, I'm sure a lot of people now will start thinking about that as well. Richard, do you have anything to add on this, on the part of the practice of ethics, as well as how important spirituality is in terms of practicing compassion and happiness?
Ethics, I think, as we all say, ethics is kind of a loaded word because different philosophies and religions have different ethics.
Or discipline.
Or codes of behavior.
Yeah.
And I'm a little leery of that myself. I think there's two qualities that I respond to, and no matter what your philosophy or religion is if it's based on a warm heart and inclusion. Inclusion. Everyone is welcome. There was that famous line of Rumi's about this is not a caravan of despair.
Yeah.
It's the caravan of dancing and love. And if you break your vows, try again, try again, try again. That even the bad guys are saved in this caravan that we're.
Yeah. All right. Okay. We are coming to an end of this session. So before I let you all go, I wanted to close by asking this question to each of you. If compassion were a muscle that we could all strengthen, what's the single exercise that you would recommend we all try? So let me think. Richard, you want to go first?
You know, I people ask me this kind of thing, and I said, look, the simplest thing, I think this actually came, maybe I picked it up from Geshe Sopa. But when you walk into a room and there's a bunch of people or there's one person there, your first thought is, I wish you happiness. And how that opens up all the doors immediately to all the other positive emotions, positive thoughts, and removes almost all the negative ones immediately. The self-cherishing thoughts. I wish you happiness. I wish you happiness. Simply that.
Right.
Oh, my answer is actually very similar. So a year and a half ago, last time I saw His Holiness was with you on a trip to Dharamsala, and the most powerful idea that I heard from him was he said, I am your mother and you are my mother. We are each other's mothers. Yeah. And I thought that I still think about that all the time. And so I think about the most powerful way to practice compassion is with strangers and to approach strangers, like wishing them happiness, but like thinking like I am your, anyone you meet, or the bus driver, or I am your mother and you are my mother. Like, how can we harm each other when we are each other's mothers? And I think kindness to strangers. One very simple example is I love to give compliments to people. I mean, people don't do this often enough. Right. You know, if someone is doing a great job, whether it's the Uber driver or the local grocery store, I'm constantly saying to the Trader Joe's, which is my grocery store, you are doing such a great job. You are so good at your job. I am really busy and I don't like to wait. And you are so fast. And people have this huge smile on their face when they get a compliment. It takes 10 seconds and we don't do that enough. So I think kindness towards strangers is my answer.
Okay. Ajay, you have the last words?
You said that it's like if it was a muscle.
Yes.
You know, nowadays I'm reading a lot about longevity and all that. And one of the things they say in that is that you have to keep strengthening your muscles. So the way I would say that you should strengthen your muscle is that all of us should take the CBCT course with diagram and feel.
Yes, right. That definitely, and I'm sure we should actually. When I was, each time you were launching this program, I said, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that. So let's sign up for all this program and let's be a vehicle of propagating compassion. The we have witnessed today is compassion can actually guide leaderships and sustain humanitarian validation through science. And His Holiness always remind us that compassion is not just about feeling, but it's about acting with both courage and wisdom. So thank you so much for sharing this wisdom with us. Richard, thank you so much for joining us from Madrid.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And Sonja, thank you for coming all the way from California, and you're going back. Wish you a safe trip. And Mr. Piramal, thank you for being a true leader and coming here to attend this launch. Thank you so much. And also want to take a moment to remind ourselves how important it is to wish Emory University all the good lucks in carry on this very important mission. And Gisela and your team wish you all the success in your center and introducing Sealing to a lot more countries. So thank you all for being patient, and thank you for our viewership online. Thank you.